Ever wished you could peek inside the journal of someone on like a deep spiritual path? Someone grappling with like big ideas guided by a true master. Well, today, consider that wish grant.
That's right. We are diving into 20 years worth of personal notes from a dedicated student of Madame de Salzmann, a direct pupil of Gurdjieff himself.
Okay?
And what makes this even more fascinating is these notes, they weren't meant for publication.
Oh, wow.
So it's like we're getting a raw, unfiltered glimpse into a real inner journey.
Okay. So 20 years, that's quite a while. What's the overarching mission here? What should we as listeners be paying attention to amidst all of these journal entries?
Well, one thing that's really fascinating is like even for the first few pages, this theme emerges, the absolute primacy of the I.
Okay.
But, and this is important, before you think this is about like ego boosting,
Right.
it's quite the opposite.
Right. I'm seeing the student even uses the word satanic at one point to describe their ego. So there's a clear distinction being made here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Madame de Salzmann constantly directs this student towards what she calls their real I. That part of us often buried, that yearns to serve something bigger than our own little dramas.
Okay.
And this awakening, it's presented as a process, not a single aha moment.
It's a journey, not a destination, as they say. And speaking of journeys, there's this incredible anecdote about the student's very first encounter with Madame de Salzmann. So imagine this. You're about to meet, this renowned teacher. Your anticipation is high, and suddenly your train stalls.
And this seemingly mundane event becomes like this really pivotal lesson in perspective.
Okay.
So the student's fuming, watching the minutes tick by, only to discover later that this delay was crucial for another student who was traveling from London.
Oh, wow.
The rain had messed up their flight, and that delay ensured that they didn't miss their meeting entirely.
Wow, talk about a cosmic tap on the shoulder, right? It really makes you wonder how often our frustration at life's little inconveniences blinds us to the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And this theme of a larger purpose, what we serve, it becomes huge throughout the journal. In fact, early on, Madame de Salzmann asks the student point blank, "What do you serve?"
Not who are you, not what do you want, but what do you serve? That's a real shift in perspective, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
It's not about self-improvement for the sake of a better Instagram bio, right? It's about aligning our lives with something much, much larger than ourselves.
Precisely. And this sense of serving a higher purpose, it connects directly to Madame de Salzmann's emphasis on the role of the body,
Okay.
but not in a superficial, like your body's a temple kind of way.
More like your body is a finely tuned instrument that needs constant attention if you want it to play the right music.
Exactly. She tells the student, the body is very important, but it must obey. So there's this understanding that the body isn't inherently bad or something to be transcended.
Right.
It's about discipline and training, preparing ourselves to house higher energies.
There's that word again. Discipline. And honestly, it seems like a recurring theme when exploring these teachings. Would you say that Madame de Salzmann shies away from emphasizing the work involved?
Not in the slightest. Wishful thinking won't get you very far on this path. It's about confronting your inner state even when it's uncomfortable.
Right.
She guides the student towards specific practices, advising on posture, on really paying attention to physical sensations, even on denying the body's wants as a way to train it.
It's like she's saying you can't expect to channel high-voltage electricity if your wiring is frayed and full of shorts. You need a strong, prepared vessel.
Precisely. She even uses this really powerful image, until another body is developed. This suggests that through our efforts, we are quite literally building a new vessel, one capable of handling these higher vibrations.
Now that is really interesting. But how do we even begin to create this other body? Is this about like extreme diets and impossible yoga poses?
It's less about outward form and more about an inner shift in attention. Madame de Salzmann, she emphasizes becoming aware of the separation between the head and the body,
Okay.
encouraging the student to stay in front of the lack, to simply observe this disconnect without judgment or the need to fix it.
That sounds incredibly difficult, just to resist that urge to analyze or problem solve. I can already feel my mind wanting to jump in and take charge.
Absolutely. It requires cultivating a different kind of attention and active receptivity, as opposed to our usual mental gymnastics.
So how do we even begin to learn that?
It's about training the attention, much like an athlete trains their body. Madame de Salzmann, she even gives the student a specific phrase to repeat when they become aware of this disconnect.
Don't leave me hanging. What's the magic phrase?
Love, have mercy. She repeats it several times, emphasizing that higher energy, which comes from the higher part of the mind, is love.
Love, have mercy. It sounds so simple, yet it points to something far beyond just like warm, fuzzy feelings. This love is active. It's a force. It's an energy that we can tap into. But how do we, as the kids say, make it work?
Well, that, my friend, brings us to one of the most cryptic and compelling statements from Madame de Saltzman, one that left the student wrestling for quite some time. Your body is not only yours. It's like she drops that bombshell. Your body is not only yours, and then doesn't explain further.
Right.
It's like a Zen koan,
Yeah.
designed to kind of short-circuit our usual way of thinking.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? If my body isn't mine, then what is it? What are the implications here?
And while we don't get like a direct explanation in the journal, there are clues kind of sprinkled throughout. Remember the anecdote where the student asked to visit Gurdjieff's old apartment?
Oh, yeah. They're expecting a simple yes or no, and Madame de Saltzman hits them with this laser-focused why.
Exactly. She cuts right through the student's desire for like a special emotional experience, forcing them to confront the emptiness behind their request.
It's like wanting to take a selfie in front of a masterpiece without bothering to understand like what makes it art in the first place.
Precisely.
Mm.
And right there, Madame de Saltzman makes this crucial connection. She says, one wishes to get something without paying for it.
Oh, interesting.
And this applies not just to the apartment visit, right? But to a deeper attitude we often have towards life, towards our own growth.
We want the reward without the work, the transformation without the effort. It's like the spiritual equivalent of wanting six-pack abs just from thinking about going to the gym.
Exactly. And it highlights a really crucial aspect of love, have mercy. This phrase, it isn't just about passively accepting whatever comes our way.
Right.
It implies an active responsibility.
Okay, but what does that responsibility look like in daily life? Is this about, like, grand gestures, saving the world? What are we talking about?
It's both simpler and more profound than that. Throughout the journal, Madame de Saltzman, she points to this idea that humanity, that we are meant to be a bridge between heaven and earth.
Okay.
She uses this really striking image of the earth itself needing conscious work, needing this higher energy to descend. And our duty, as you will, is to become a conduit for that energy.
So we're not just working on ourselves for ourselves, but to play a role in something much larger, to become instruments within this like grand orchestra we're only just starting to hear.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the real I.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment and then resting on our laurels.
Right.
It's about constantly refining ourselves, our instrument, so that we're capable of handling this higher energy and transmitting it into the world.
But how do we even begin to grasp this energy, this love that seems so central to everything?
Well, the student wrestles with this too. 1 minute, they're having these moments of clarity, feeling connected to this purpose, and the next they're plunged back into doubt and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Madame de Saltzman, she doesn't offer easy answers. Instead, she guides the student through a process.
Sounds familiar. I think anyone who's ever sincerely tried to work on themselves knows that 1 step forward, 2 steps back feeling.
Exactly. And one of the most unexpected tools that Madame de Saltzman uses is suffering.
Okay.
Not suffering for its own sake, of course, but as a catalyst for growth.
This sounds a bit like the idea of conscious suffering, not wallowing in misery, but choosing to be present with our discomfort, our limitations, as a way to move through them.
Exactly. Madame de Saltzman, she repeatedly emphasizes the importance of not shying away from our lack or inadequacy.
Right.
It's by facing those things head on that we create this space for something new to emerge.
So it's less about becoming perfect and more about becoming empty in a way. Empty of our preconceptions or ego's defenses so that this higher energy can flow through us.
Precisely. It's in that surrender, that letting go of control, that we become truly receptive. And this is where the practice of connecting the head and the body becomes so essential.
You talked about this earlier, but it seems like more than just a physical exercise. How does it tie into this idea of surrendering to a higher purpose?
Well, remember, the students struggle with the ego wanting to possess the higher energy.
Yeah, wanting to like go pro before even mastering the basics.
Exactly. By cultivating this deep embodied awareness, we become less susceptible to the ego's tricks.
Okay.
It's like shining a light on a shadow.
Right.
The more we try to fight it directly, the stronger it seems. But by bringing awareness to our physical sensations, our breath, the movement of energy within our bodies?
We create a different kind of relationship to our inner world.
Exactly. It's less about conquering the ego and more about shifting our center of gravity. The student describes it as becoming like a good metal conductor, allowing electricity to flow through them from one level to another.
That's such a powerful image. We become a conduit, not the source. But this brings up a question. Even with all of this work, all this effort to become this good conductor, is there ever a sense of arrival? Does the student reach a point where they're free from doubt?
That's a question we'll delve into as we continue.
It really is a big question, isn't it? You know, this idea that we put all this work in, striving to refine ourselves, become these good conductors, but is there ever like a finish line?
Yeah.
Does the student, after 20 years, finally reach a point of complete certainty, complete freedom from doubt?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's something we all grapple with on this path of inner work. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even Madame de Salzmann, this advanced practitioner, she expresses a sense of urgency, a need for the student to continue working, striving.
Wait, really? I had this image of her as this like fully realized master, calmly observing the world from a place of total peace.
Right.
It never even occurred to me that she might still be relying on, well, anyone, let alone like her students.
It's easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? Thinking that at a certain level of spiritual attainment, all struggle just, magically disappears.
Yeah.
But the journal tells a different story. There's this incredibly poignant passage where Madame de Salzmann, she's talking about Gurdjieff's own concern for the continuation of his work.
Okay.
A feeling, she says, that she now understood very deeply.
So she felt this responsibility to carry the torch, so to speak.
Exactly. And not just to preserve knowledge in some like abstract sense, but to ensure it was lived, embodied by others.
Right.
She makes it clear that she needs others to step up, to take ownership of their growth, not just for their own sake, but to contribute to something much larger than themselves.
It's like we're all part of this relay race across time. Each generation passes the baton not to a single, star athlete, but to everyone willing to run.
What a perfect analogy. And it highlights something really crucial about this work. It's not about becoming some kind of spiritual superhero, saving the world single-handedly.
Right.
It's about each of us playing our part,
Yeah.
however small it may seem.
That's actually really encouraging. It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect and instead focuses on simply showing up, doing the work, even if it's just one tiny step at a time.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final provocative thought that the journal leaves us with.
Okay.
If someone like Madame de Salzmann, at her level of being, still felt this need for others to work, for humanity to wake up, what does that tell us about the nature of this work? What does it mean for our own lives, our own choices?
It's like she's holding up a mirror, isn't it? Not just reflecting back the student's journey, but ours as well. If this is the standard, the dedication required, how do we measure up? What choices are we making day in and day out that either contribute to or hinder this larger work?
That's the question we're left to ponder. And perhaps it's not about finding a definitive answer, but about letting that question guide us, challenge us, and ultimately inspire us to keep showing up, keep doing the work, even if we can't see the full picture just yet.
And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive into the teachings of Madame de Salzmann. We explored the primacy of the real I, the role of the body, the necessity of conscious work, the power of love, and this profound sense of duty to something larger than ourselves. May these insights stay with you, prompting you to ask not just what do I want, but what do I serve? Until next time, keep diving deep and keep asking the big questions.